Hey everyone, welcome to another and hopefully a super fun-filled episode of Career Retrospectives. I am joined by my two regular co-hosts, Kyle and Mike.
Hey everyone.
Yo, what's up?
What's going on? So glad to have you both here. We're gonna be breaking down Linkin Park's entire career discography from the very beginning until their most recent album. Gentlemen, are we ready for this?
Oh, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Ready to make
do it.
I'm mad.
Well, let me share my screen and let's go into. So, what are some, just out of curiosity, whoever wants to go first? What are some of your initial? Let's start with Kyle. What are some of your initial impressions of Linkin Park when you first think of them?
Linkin Park's very nostalgic for me. They're one of the first bands I really got into. I'm talking back in the Hybrid Theory days. So I was very young at the time. But even then, so we're talking about 2000. Yeah, 2000. So I was 5, 6 years old, and really I heard One Step Closer in the end and Crawling on this burned CD that my dad's friend made him, and I've been hooked ever since. They're definitely if not top 5, definitely top 10 band of all time for me. And to say that when they haven't released music, and understandably so, in 5 years, and have been completely dormant, which again, understandable. Usually when a band does that, they fall out of the top list. Like JT, we did a video on Metallica, and I felt that way about them, as they spend so long between things that they kind of fell down my list of artists. But Linkin Park has never done that. They've consistently stayed at the top. It's a very nostalgic act for me, and I've loved everything that they've put out. So making just so everyone knows going forward, my list, none of them I would say are bad. So even the album that I have down as number 7, absolutely the last on the list here, is essentially the worst of the best, which is, in Linkin Park standards, still very good.
Awesome. Mike, what do you got on Linkin Park?
So, I mean, I'm a little older than you guys. I'm the grandfather of the group here. So, yes, everyone may launch your hate in the comments section. Old man, bald head. Hey, respect your elders. All right. But anyway,
okay,
yeah,
Boomer.
That's right. Boomer is here to deliver. So, yeah. So I obviously have a little more of I think, during a certain time, seeing music change. Nu metal was a big thing. I was always a big fan of nu metal, and original Linkin Park had a very close kind of knit relationship with that. Like, the Korn, Slipknot, kind of the rap rock movement was kind of coming into into form here. A lot of bands were doing that kind of thing, and I think what they brought to the party was a little more of kind of an interesting energy, and kind of a like just youth and vitality, and just the message they were kind of bringing. A lot of people related to it, so for me, the original Linkin Park, which is interesting, as I got older and came back and listened to it. If you were to talk to original me, like back in the day, I would have been like, yeah, absolutely. Hybrid Theory and the original, like, Meteora, were like basically all there was. And then everything else was kind of just their evolution, which I kind of wanted everything to stay the same. But as I got older, I saw the maturity change with the new albums that came out, and would welcome some new sounds, and a good balance of everything from the past and everything from the future. So they're a band who has refused to stay the same, but have always come back to their roots, and we're able to touch back on their original self. And I really appreciate that with some of the newer albums, some of the older albums, and there's a good mixture in between. So yeah, I'm excited to release all the information here and how we all think of everything. Kyle, right? Kyle.
Oh yeah. Oh, just do it.
Yeah. I will say I am probably I hope this isn't offending. I am the youngest person here. And,
I'm offended.
Okay, sorry, but I will say, knowing Linkin Park, like very, very loosely. I mean, I went in 2000 and I was 2 years old. So I don't really have too many connections with Linkin Park, but going into their each album's track by track, each of their studio albums track by track was really just something to dive into. And I was really excited to do it for this particular episode. And it really hit me hard. Like I forgot about Numb. I forgot about it in the end. I was like, oh, that's right. I remember that song and stuff like that. We'll get to all that in a little bit. But this is a very truthfully a new thing for me, diving into like a band's whole catalog like this in particular, and hitting it off on this note. I think we'll get to our rankings at the very end, but we'll see how it goes. So, but I'm excited. I was excited to do this, and now I'm excited to do this now. So let's dive into their first album, which came out in 2000, which was Hybrid Theory. I have it saved and pulled up for everyone who's watching us live. That is, there were quick backstory. I'll let Kyle do a lot of help me out in here in a second. But some of the singles released were really good, and other tracks in the album too that stood out are really good too. But I'm gonna let Kyle go first. So, Kyle, what's your take on their debut album, Hybrid Theory?
Yeah, this one is very, like I said in my opening, they're very nostalgic for me. This is really, like many people, probably most people, their introduction to Linkin Park. Even younger fans today, this is really their entry point. The singles on this, a lot of times, I'm one of those people that I hear the singles on an album, and then I dive into the album and I'm like, oh, why'd they choose those as singles? Not with this one. I think they really did insanely well selecting the singles from this album. I don't think they could have picked any better ones. My one criticism to start with is that it holds up very well. Songwriting wise, music wise, like instrumentally, it holds up very well. Better than a lot of new metal from the time and a little bit earlier does. Where it does sound dated though, the production a bit. But again, I find that with a lot of new metal from that time, production wise, it does sound very dated. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all. It's just something that noticeable when you go back and listen to it. It's honestly one of the top 3, in my opinion, debut albums of all time. It's insanely rare for a band or artist to put out an album of this quality as their first album. It really doesn't happen very often. The really only other 2 I could think of off the top of my head, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction and Boston's first album. Outside of that, it's very rare for this to happen. And yeah, I mean, that's in terms of initial thoughts on this album, that's where I'm at.
Mike, where you at?
Yeah, actually, this album felt really fresh and just kind of brought that kind of just, I don't know, that feeling of aggression and kind of like, and as a kid growing up, I kind of hated the tracks that were like mostly rap. Like I would start off as like the rap. I don't even think of his name. The guy in the band who's the main, vocalist who raps. Like I always hated those
Mike Shinoda.
tracks. Yeah, Mike Shinoda. Yeah. That's his name. Thank you. My name is Mike. I should have known this. I felt like this album did a very good job of having a good pacing and spacing of those types of tracks, and just very memorable songs. One Step Closer is my favorite Linkin Park song of their entire discography. So it's always been the song I would always be, in an argument with someone, oh, Linkin Park's not heavy, or they're not, they're just kind of posers or whatever. It always kind of served as like an anthem to that if Linkin Park wants to, they can bring the heavy. It just has such great songs. I, more than you guys, I'm sure, became beaten to death by replay songs over and over again on the radio. in 2000, I was like heading towards 17, 18 years old. So I was used to hearing the same songs over and over, and it can kind of hurt an album's kind of replayability sometimes when you've heard those songs so much. Like Crawling probably was one of the most replayed songs, I think, like next to In the End, of course, but like One Step Closer, not so much. Like it was like it definitely was like beaten. I've beaten in my head over. So I sometimes it was harder for me to listen to certain songs on this album after hearing it in the year that it was released, and again and again and again. But like coming back to it, it still holds up. And I find these has a lot of songs that really stay with you, and kind of like have a lasting impression, and a good mixture. I think that's a good word I have here. A good mixture of the rap and the rock and the new metal influence. More new metal influences on this than any of their upcoming releases.
Yeah.
Again, I think this is probably the last album that has some of those sounds in it. So that's an important kind of evolution or movement towards a certain style and maturity in songwriting, I guess you could say. So yeah.
Now, do you guys remember the early days of YouTube where Crawling was just associated with all the animated music videos that people would make?
Yep,
I think we've all watched quite a few of those ones.
100%.
Hundreds of times on that, hundreds of times.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
sure.
For me personally, as again, diving into Linkin Park's discography, starting with their first album, I recognize a lot more songs than I thought I did, than I remember, I should say. Because I mean, being young enough to remember, like In the End would be on the radio and the opening piano intro, I'm like, oh, it's that song, right? And then, but Crawling as well, I was like, oh my god, that's that song that I can't get. I couldn't remember what it was called for all these years, and I was like, oh, that's right. And One Step Closer, I thought was great. Paper Cut, all the singles are fantastic, and I agree with Kyle. This is, as far as a debut album goes, I definitely put it up there for sure in the top 5. I mean, personally, top 5. Because you mentioned Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, you mentioned Boston's debut, you mentioned this one. I would also throw Pearl Jam's 10 in the mix personally, but that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But I definitely agree. This is definitely a hard-hitting. It sold 27 million copies worldwide. It's certified 12 platinum. This is their debut album. It's a pretty darn good record if it's selling that much still to this day. And the streaming numbers are off the charts. In the end, it's reached over 1 billion streams on Spotify. I checked that out today just before we started.
They got a couple songs in the billion mark.
Yeah, which
I listened to them when they were 0, guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Mike was 0. That's right.
I'm just kidding. I had no clue they were even called 0 before.
Oh, really?
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I had no clue. Yeah. So.
No, but like I said, for a debut album and kind of just kicking off their career, I would say it was definitely a great start to their career. I mean, you definitely see there is you hear all the elements of the genres there, of new metal, of rap metal, alternative metal, rap rock, alternative rock. You hear all those blends all together perfectly on this record, and it is a really solid record. But should we get into the track listing a little bit or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Hold on. For those of you who are listening to this, you won't be able to see this, but let's talk about this for a second. So the original release had 12 songs, and they're all written by at least the band or a couple of the people involved as well. So we'll get into the track listing right here. Paper Cut, One Step Closer, With You, Points of Authority, Crawling, Runaway, By Myself, In the End, A Place for My Head, Forgotten, Cure for the Itch, and Pushing Me Away. What are some takeaways for you guys? Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah. So where to start? So I'll start with my top songs. I'll start there. No particular order, just the ones that really stand out to me the most: Paper Cut, One Step Closer, In the End, and Place for My Head. I think Place for My Head is the one song that I think could have been a single if they wanted to do another one. I really like that song. So as a common theme that we'll see going forward from here, a lot of my favorite aspects of Linkin Park, a lot of my favorite moments are Mike Shinoda's rapping. I find he adds a lot to it. And he's a big part of what makes them unique in a way. Because you had the other new metal acts that incorporated rapping a little bit, like Limp Bizkit, all them. But Mike did it. I think he was definitely the most technically skilled rapper doing it in the genre. He mixes the sounds very well. I think he is really the driving force behind the band. And so, yeah, that's going to be something we see a lot, is his impact in the songs. Like, especially, I think it shines the most on this album, In a Place for My Head. Now, I'm going to go into the parts of it that I don't like as much, because we touched on a lot of the positives. This album was perfect for, getting it when you're younger, getting into music. It's very angsty. It's very aggressive, to the point a lot of the songs I find myself nowadays not being able to relate to, specifically Crawling. Crawling, now going back to it, revisiting it, yeah, it's catchy, but going back to it, I'm more like cringing at the lyrics a little bit. They're a little too angsty and emo for me. But I do think and they did this shortly before Chester's death, they would play it as a piano ballad live. And I think that it really put a fresh take on it. And to me, that's the version I go to more now. But I mean, other than that, it's great. Like I said, some of it does feel a bit dated. Specifically for me, the three like low points of the album, which I'm saying low points, but they're, by any standards, they're a good song. Like it's only a low point in terms of what I expect from Linkin Park, and just sonically in terms of production. With You never really did much for me. Forgotten, it's Forgotten starts off very good, starts off very aggressive. I feel like a lot of it just kind of gets forgettable, and Runaway is probably my least favorite. Other than that, like I said, any other band would be lucky to put out a song that good. But in terms of what I gotta pick out some songs I don't like as much, and that's what I would go with.
Mike, what do you got?
So it's what I love about this album is it doesn't have too many other kinds of theatrical elements. It's just straightforward, like, just in your face, like here's the rhythm, here's the beat, here's the riff, and it's just unapologetic. And like I agree with Kyle, like it's youthful to almost to a fault, that it kind of is making a statement, even if that statement is angsty and kind of cringy. And it doesn't apologize. It doesn't need to impress you with any kind of, hey, we're trying to be older than we appear, or like more diverse than we appear. It was just a straightforward. A lot of the songs have a similar kind of sound and aggression, and like like you don't hear too many songs with like the in the end kind of style. You don't hear too many songs with the one step closer. Like a lot of the songs like have their own kind. They all have their own kind of sound, and they're straightforward. Just kind of here's in your face. And I'm kind of opposite of Kyle. I actually, growing up and still to this day, I like the songs that blended Mike Shinoda's rapping with the metal, and found a kind of a comfort, kind of like agreement. When one of them fell out of place, well, I guess I'm lying here. I always favor the rock and metal taking the reins, but when I felt they were the most like themselves, when they found that perfect balance. If they did all the metal and then the harder stuff, they wouldn't be Linkin Park anymore. They'd just be trying to kind of like imitate some of the sounds coming from the bands that they've kind of grew up listening to, and were trying to kind of draw some influence from. So it was like a perfect unity of that rapping style and the turntables and the stuff that they were doing in this kind of genre with the metal and the new metal and the rap rock kind of side. So yeah, I mean, in the end, it's such a great song still to this day. I could listen to that and remember how many good times I had listening to that, no matter where I was. Some of the most catchy, kinds of points of the album. Some of the ending songs really, I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember growing up. And not that they were bad. It was just as a kid growing up, I'd play the first, like 5 or 6, 7 songs, and then everything else, I would just beat those songs to death, and everything else would just kind of, it would give me the feeling of like that the band showcased their what's to come, some of the kind of sounds that we're bringing. So yeah, I mean, like I said, One Step Closer is one of my favorite songs. Somewhere in there is in the end of their entire discography, and they were definitely drawing some influences and creating original sound that they were kind of leading towards in upcoming albums.
So the thing for me is that, like, when I look at this track listing, I agree with, I don't want to repeat too much because we're pretty much all on the same page here. But as far as like the singles that got released, I tend to go back. If I were to go back to any of them, I would say I go back to the singles that got released. I also throw Runaway in there as well, personally. Like Mike said, the first 7 or 8 songs are just killer. They're really, really, really great. As far as the tracks 9, 10, 11, and 12, they're still really, really, really good. But they just get kind of like what Mike said. They kind of get forgotten about. Not trying to rip off track 10, but they get forgotten about because the other tracks are just that good. And that's the way I feel about this record. Truthfully, is that, like, the first, when I was listening to it for the first time through a day or two ago, because I finished listening to it today. The first like 7 or 8 songs are killer, which they're really, really awesome. But when I look back at, when I flash back to when I was listening to the other day to get ready for our stream today, for the tracks 9 through 12, they don't resonate as much as like I thought they would. You know what I mean? Because I'm listening to the whole album, I think, oh, I want to remember this track or that track or this track. But for me personally, the first 8 tracks are awesome, and that's not a slur to tracks 9 through 12, like I said. But these are just all around incredible songs, and it shows how good this was released 22 years ago. It still holds up today as far as production goes, in my eyes, production and quality goes. But the question is, this is Mike's first time doing this too. Where does this rank on your Linkin Park list? Kyle, what do you got?
This one sits at number 3 for me.
Oh my God.
Number 3.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm over
really worried for a second.
I'm over here waving them off. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I have a flare in my hand. It's like Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs.
I gotta put it at number 3. It's such a good debut album, but I think that there's things that they've done after this that I think just beat it out a little bit more for that, number 1 or 2 spot. Like I said, some of it just kind of does sound a little dated. And I agree with what Mike said too, where it's definitely youthful to a fault at points, just because as I've gotten older, I've just started to drift more away from this album and more into their more mature works. So yeah, I got to put it at number 3.
Mike, what do you got?
This is my number 2 album right here, man. This is definitely
okay.
the nostalgic qualities of it, the roughness of it, the rough and it's good roughness, like straightforward, like pound you in the face songs, but then it's got its maturity side. It's got its the best of both worlds. I definitely feel like it is one of those kinds of albums that I feel like I can't put at the complete top because like Kyle said, it's kind of the establishment of who they were, and there's some stuff that they did later on that I felt like was a better blend rather than just kind of like the one note they were striking with some of the other songs, obviously, to the gems that kind of shine out here. So like, the ones that shine out where they have a perfect blending of everything, it's like unique. Like in the end, I feel like it's like one of those kind of songs where you're like, this song almost could have ended up on the next album. Like it almost feels like it was the perfect balance of what their sound was heading towards. And and that's kind of an interesting thing where you can take that kind of song and move it from another album and say, wow, this almost feels like something that they were heading towards. So yeah, it's definitely sitting on that second area for me. And yeah, just good things to come. And sure.
So for me personally, I have it at number one for a few reasons. Number one, because if I were to go back to any of the albums as a whole, I would go back to this one personally. That's me. Maybe that's my inner youth coming out and saying, oh, just go back to your nostalgia. I don't know, whatever, right?
I
But
knew his background was telling us something. Damn it, I should have made it.
exactly, Mike. Exactly. That is 100% why I chose this as my number one. No, but honestly, like there's something about debut albums in general that I like, and like whether it be like, we talked about Appetite for Destruction for a sec, or even Van Halen's debut we talked about for a sec too. At one point, Colin and I did. But there's something about, to me personally, when an artist comes out and they establish who they are with that first record, like whether it be the 10 songs, the 9 songs, the 12 songs, that really define who they are and take you on a journey through the listener's life and their lives as well. So for me personally, that is my number one. Hybrid Theory is my number one for many reasons more, but we have only so much time to get to the rest of the albums too. But let's jump over. So far so good. Let's jump over to their next album in 2000. Was it 3? I believe. Is that right?
2003. Yep.
All right. Is it called Meteor?
Meteora.
Yeah.
Meteora. Okay, I wasn't sure. Meteor. I'm gonna let Kyle explain this one because I'm not super as familiar with this, but I'm gonna let Kyle do it. Go ahead.
So here's where my unpopular opinions really start to take shape. This is a by far fan favorite album. So a lot of people would even put it above Hybrid Theory. It's going to spoil it a little bit now. I am not one of those people. Mm-hmm. I talked about Hybrid Theory sounding a little slightly dated. To me, this album sounds the most dated of all their work. It is, again, not to repeat what Mike said before, but I kind of have to in this case. It is like emotional almost to a fault. It is a pretty dark album in a lot of spots, which is on its own not bad. I just think that it grounded itself so much in that early 2000s, like more emo angsty sound, that it just kind of got stuck there. I don't really go back to it all that much. Now, I will say it has some of my favorite Linkin Park songs of all time on it, but also some of my least favorite, where that's where as an album as a whole, it drags it down for me. Because I'm like, man, songs like Faint and like Numb, Breaking the Habit, again, great selection of singles. And some of the other songs are excellent too. But they have like some just top tier quality songs on here. And then just a lot of filler that I really could do without. And, it's something that I see a lot on bands on their, second album. But as far as second albums go, they didn't drop the ball. It's still a good album. It's still, very good. But to me, it just comes off as a little bit dated. Again, for me, Mike's rapping is the high point on this one. This one definitely does lean a little more into the rap stuff in certain parts than Hybrid Theory did. It's a little more, I don't want to say it's more new metal, but it definitely has more, or less like hard rock elements than Hybrid Theory does.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, more rap stuff going on with it. More a little, the rock has been toned down. They have a lot more of the kind of sampled kind of like keyboard kind of intros that they've become known for. Almost like In the End would have that keyboard kind of in beginning. It turned digital in this album. It feels like a little more like they're trying to express a modern kind of sound on this that is kind of leaning over to that rap side more so. I mean, Somewhere I Belong is one of my favorite album songs all time from them. It's like right there, and like the second song under somewhere. One last wow, just lost it. One was it One Last Chance? I can't remember. Was it? Whoa,
So much for your favorite song.
yeah, right. I know. I never cared about the title. I cared about yeah, but like, yeah, I definitely felt actually Breaking the Habit's one of my least favorite songs from this album, because it feels very like it just runs this track. I always hated songs that repeat the same chorus over and over again, almost like, hey, okay, we're wrapping up the song, so we're gonna keep repeating the same lines, and then it felt very artificial to me. So like, but overall, like, good album. Definitely, it's got some more, yeah, like you say, more rap stuff, which I was never a huge on, but it also it's got some catchiness to it, and I definitely am liking it, just not as not as much as the previous album.
Yeah, for me personally, I mean, coming off of the tremendous success, truthfully, of their first album, you would think, oh, I mean, for some people would say, like, some artists I feel like would do like, let's just remake the same album, the debut album, with the second album, and let's call it something else. When I feel like Linkin Park did sort of did not do that with this album. Like sound wise, I was again listening to it yesterday to prep for today, and I was like, it's similar to the first album for sure. But I will say, I agree with both of you guys. We're on the same page pretty much. Like the rapping is a little bit more. There's a little bit more. There's more rapping. Numb. We got to bring up Numb, of course. Numb is a phenomenal song in general. I mean, it is. I mean, didn't Jay-Z do something with this at one point?
They did a EP, Collision Course, that was not remixes per se, but just different versions, like mashup versions of Jay-Z and Linkin Park songs. It's very good if you haven't checked it out. I actually do a lot of the songs that were used for Meteora on it. A lot of them I actually ended up preferring the ones that were on Collision Course. That was a fantastic EP.
Okay. No, because I remember it says Jay-Z right here. I was like, wait a second. I forgot that he did Numb and Encore. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but yeah. So, but like some of the singles released, I mean, Somewhere I Belong, Faint, Numb, From the Inside, Breaking the Habit. I mean, these are all, I mean, just really just all around great sounding songs too, personally, because like my childhood was not as like filled with Linkin Park as you guys were per se, but like as a diving into their discography for this stream, I felt really like going into this one, I was like, it does sound kind of similar to the first one, but it does do things a little bit differently. Like Mike said, there's a little bit more rapping. It's equivalent to the first one? We'll have to wait and see, of course. But like, I think it as a second album, it does hold up very well. Also, and I'm just reading off right here. It says it's the 8th best-selling album of the 21st century, which is crazy to me, but that's awesome at the same time.
And just to like mention, it's so this is just my personal thing. I was always less of a fan of the digital remix, the industrial side of nu metal, and I liked more of the raw kind of just rock and whatever else. And you notice it says it's following a Reanimation collection album featured remixes of their songs from Hybrid Theory. As I was a kid growing up, we had a kind of we were like, oh no, please don't see them head towards a certain direction, which takes away from the rock heaviness and brings it to a more of a rap beats style. So this is my personal opinion. We could see that the direction they were heading by them releasing that album, and we were kind of cringing to like what the next album was going to have. And although it did feel a little more remix, kind of digital, kind of influenced on it, it wasn't so much that I felt all is lost, but I also was kind of like, like, oh no, like things are changing. And like, once again, I'm a person who doesn't like too much change. I like gradual change rather than like 0 to 60, in 2 seconds. So like there's nothing wrong with gradual change, but like just complete utter switch over kind of leaves you left in the dust with kind of the identity you feel the band has and that you have in your mind of them. So yeah, it could be kind of shocking, but they did a good job here,
Yeah, I agree. Pretty much everything Mike just said, I would echo completely. But let's come down to the track listing as well before we get to our ranking of what exactly we'll rank this as. But Forward as an instrumental, Don't Stay, Somewhere I Belong, Lying From You, Hit the Floor, Easier to Run, Faint, Figure, .09, Breaking the Habit, From Inside, Nobody's Listening, Session is just an instrumental, and Numb as the last song on the record. What's our take and what are some standouts? Kyle, you want to go first?
Yeah, my standouts are, again, especially in the early days, they did a great job picking singles. Faint is always been a top tier Linkin Park song for me. Excellent job blending like the rapping and the singing and the rock style on that one. Breaking the Habit, I've always really liked that one. Numb, it's, you know what, I will say in recent years, Numb has gotten a little bit overplayed to the point where I do end up skipping it a lot, but there's no debate. It's an incredible song. It very well written, lyrically, very deep, meaningful. It's great. But the underappreciated one for me is Hit the Floor. I love Hit the Floor. I love Mike's rapping, but that one is, it's just so aggressive in like that rap way. It's aggressive without having to be like a straight up rock song, which I really enjoy. And then the standouts in the opposite end that really don't do much for me. Easier to Run, it's just kind of like filler to me. I don't know, never did much. Same thing, Figure 9, it's just kind of there. And then arguably my least favorite Linkin Park song of all time. It's definitely up there if it's not. Nobody's Listening. I really do not like Nobody's Listening. There's something about the sound of it that just really is jarring. The instrumental with how he sings over it too, it just really throws me out of the album. And like you guys kind of said with Hybrid Theory, I feel this way about pretty much all their albums, is that they always start off super strong, and then the last like quarter of the album is always like, there's a lot of stuff in there I don't really think is as good. I mean, ending it on Numb is great, but it just kind of, I wouldn't say falls apart, but it's definitely front loaded, and I feel like they do that with a lot of their albums.
Mike, Standout Tracks.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Somewhere I Belong was your least favorite.
Oh, no, Somewhere I Belong is great.
Okay, cool. I was just like, don't say it, Kyle. Don't do it. Don't do this to me. But yeah, I agree 100%. Kind of the same thing. It definitely Numb is one of those songs that as much as I loved it, and it's still a great song, it's just it was replayed and kind of I was not a fan of the Jay-Z remix album. I mean, yeah, once again, speaking from the older head of the group, I was always kind of like, I like the idea of rap and rock. I just never liked the remix, I guess you could say. I've always hated remix of songs. I've always just wanted to hear the song more than I wanted to hear the remix. Especially if it's towards rap. So yeah, I mean, like Don't Stay is just a freaking it just reminds you that they're here they're not playing around, they're not coming in light. And then you got Somewhere I Belong, obviously amazing. Faint, great. Breaking the Habit, once I said, not those songs I like, feels a little too 1 2 3 1 2 3 and then finish, but it's still a decent song for an album that you wouldn't expect to have so many memorable songs in it. And then so yeah, great song, continuation, but a little more elements in it that I think started to kind of sit a little off with me. Not kind of feeling as much like I'm afraid of the direction that they're going to be heading. I guess you could say. So.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some standout tracks personally. I would say Somewhere I Belong, Faint, of course, Numb is a given. I mean, yes, it's been played a lot, as Kyle mentioned. I will say, but I haven't listened to it enough to the point where I'm like, I got tired of it. But if I were to go back to it, I have no problem going back to Numb. It still sounds great to this day.
Yo, Kyle, what's up?
So sorry about that. I disconnected for a second there. What's going on?
I thought your mom came in.
No, of course. But Somewhere I Belong, Faint, Breaking Habit, I actually really like. And Numb, of course, as I was saying, those are probably my standout tracks for me personally. But the question is, where does this rank for your Linkin Park albums? Kyle, what do you got?
All right, so this one could get me into some trouble. This is last.
Apparently he left. He's like, yeah, dude, it's so much trouble.
Out.
He didn't even want to hear it. He's just like, look, I'm done.
But no, in all seriousness, this is number 7. This is last for me.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, like I said earlier, every Linkin Park album is a good album. Any band would be lucky to release something of this quality. It's just that they've had things after this that I feel like really push them forward. And this one just, while it was different, felt like a little bit more of the same as Hybrid Theory to me, and not as good. And it does have a lot of that industrial quality to it that I feel like didn't age that well looking back on it like 19 years later.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, this is my number 3. I'm a little basic boy here, but I definitely, growing up listening to them, I can remember where I was and what I was doing when I was listening to this album, which I told you I hate nostalgia. It's a jerk, but it definitely doesn't sit as good. So I'm going to put it down at 3, below Hybrid Theory at number 2, but it definitely carries on some of the feels, the kind of the identity that I think Linkin Park kind of, in my mind, continues to be represented by, which is interesting because you guys are a lot younger, so your identity of, well, Kyle, I think, coming from a longtime fan, has an identity of where he sees Linkin Park, and he might look at these old albums and say, that was Linkin Park, this is Linkin Park. For me, that is Linkin Park, and what they are today was them, which is strange because they are who they are now, but to me, it's who they were, because in my eyes, that moment was frozen in time. It was the way I was always going to remember them, no matter what they played today. And I think that's kind of, that's what I love about having people of different ages, different places in their career, different understandings, because we all have a frozen image of what we see something as. And yeah, I definitely put it at 3. Not as good as Hybrid Theory, but
yeah. So for me personally, I mean, coming off of the success of Hybrid Theory, coming off of like an album that went on to achieve multi-platinum status and still has many great hit singles on it as well, this is my number 2. Okay, for me personally, because I mean, as I'm going to reiterate this the whole time we're doing this, but going into this entire, because I'm not, outside of like their earlier like 2002, 2003 stuff, I'm not super familiar with them in general, but going into it and diving into their other albums was really a journey, for lack of a better word. Right. And enjoying a lot of it. So, but this is my number 2 because this just, I think mainly because Numb kind of tipped it that way. Because like it's just, oh, it's that song. I remember that song from when I was really little. I had like those nostalgia feelings and whatnot. But like, this is my number 2. But me personally, this is my number 2. But that is where I am with Linkin Park. So, are we all set to talk about what's the next one? That's minutes. Yeah, what is it called?
Yep, Minutes to Midnight.
Minutes to Midnight from 2007. Kyle, you want to share your thoughts on this, or do you want to let Mike do it first?
I can go. So this is the beginning of what I refer to as the Transformers era of Linkin Park, where they just started getting in every Transformers soundtrack.
Yes.
But that aside, this where this is interesting to me because where Meteora really leaned into the more industrial and like rap aspects of Hybrid Theory, this was just like outside of 2 songs, we're not rapping anymore. It's a rock album. It's an alternative rock album. It's not even new metal. There's no outside of the song Given Up, there's really no metal in this. It's just an alternative rock album. And to me, this is where Linkin Park starts to get interesting, I'll say. Like, I mean that in a good way, where they started to be like, you know what? No, we're gonna make the music we want to make. It may not be what people want from us, but we're gonna write it and we're gonna release it, which I always respect people when they do that. And I think it worked. I think it has a lot of great songs on here. So I mean, that's pretty much where I am. It's just big change in sound from Meteora and Hybrid Theory for that matter. But at the time, I remember it being not the most well received by fans. And I think that does come back to the fact that outside of Bleed It Out and Hands Held High, there's really no rap on here. It's just straight up alternative rock, like not even metal.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, I love this album. It really felt like I definitely 100% agree with Kyle. It definitely felt like they had taken a mature kind of direction. It felt much more safer, like radio friendly at times. Like they had some of these songs that I would hear on the radio and be like, "What? That's Linkin Park?" Like the old me would have been appalled and outraged that like a band could kind of pull off these like very kind of quiet, what I forget the song is. If you could go to the track listing, I know I'm breaking a rule of revealing the track listing, but gotta do it
It's
anyway.
okay.
Gosh dang it.
You can cheat this time.
Yeah. Was it Shadow of the Day? I think it was. And it definitely had a maturity direction where it was like appealing to kind of different sides. As Kyle kind of said, with the less rapping, which I was completely okay with, but also like in a lot of ways made you forget you were listening to Linkin Park to some degree, and some of the elements of Linkin Park were missing. Which I'll be honest with you, when you're coming at it from my point of view, it feels a refreshing because someone who hasn't been listening to Linkin Park as long as I have, for as many years as I have, might be like, yeah, I'm waiting for the next album that sounds like Linkin Park's usual thing. But when I heard those 2 albums so much, that to hear something a little less of the same and kind of opened up a fresh direction, it was definitely it was I was very upset back in the day, but today I'm very appreciative of the change. And Mike Shinoda had his own solo project take off here, the Fort Minor project, which means he was getting his rap kind of. I would say he's, in a way, the band might have actually said, "Hey, how about you like bring that over to your own thing, and we bring a little bit less of that influence here on this record, and we'll see how it goes." Maybe this isn't true at all. This could be completely conjecture. He maybe just kind of assuming, but I definitely feel they were trying to take a kind of a change in direction to some of the degree for this album. So I mean, yeah, but I absolutely love this album.
Yeah.
One of my top.
I just want to echo one of the things you said there because it's very true. At the time, me growing up with Linkin Park having them be such a big band, from the time I was like 5 years old with Hybrid Theory onwards, I was not a fan of this album when it first came out. I didn't appreciate it then. It's definitely a more mature sound. And looking back on it like years later, it wasn't until years later that I really went back, listened to it. I was like, wow, this album is way better than I gave it credit for. Like it, and that's what I felt. You'll see this moving forward with some of the other albums here, but that's how I felt with a lot of their like mid-career albums as well. Whereas I didn't at the time, I was like, oh, what happened to them? I want Hybrid Theory and Meteora again. And it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh, this is, they just matured as people. And now that I'm also matured as a person, like I much prefer like this over, you know, what I think would have happened if they just try to remake the same album a third time.
Yeah, for me, I mean, going into this album in general, I was, because I got this is where my generally speaking knowledge of Linkin Park kind of like petered off. I mean, when I was really young, I mean, 2007, I was only 9 years old. It was a long time. I mean, I was born 1998, so I was just getting close to 10. And I, truth be told, I do not kill me, but I don't remember when this album came out because I was like 9. but I will say, listening to it for the first time through recently, what a different pace completely, as you both keep mentioning. What there's not too much metal. There's more like, it is an alternative rock album for sure. Kyle was right. I forget what song it was, but it was in the Transformers movies. I forget which one it was. But which one?
It was What I've Done was in the first one.
Oh, okay.
What did you do, Kyle? Oh, you're saying it's a song there.
Wait, what? What are you talking about? No, but I just listening to this album all the way through, and we're getting to the track listing in 1 second, but going through this album, what you're right, it is a different style, it is a different type of, you know, feel as well from like from their first 2 records. But at the same time, it also is, if I'm not mistaken, it's longer too. I mean, the first one was like what, like probably like what, 35, 39 minutes. This one's 43 minutes long too. It's 12 songs as well. We'll get to the track listing too, but just a different sound. I liked it overall because I had not listened to it. I don't remember the singles. I was very young. I don't really remember a lot of it when it first came out. But what I did like what I hear as of now, because it was something a little bit different from what with the first 2 records were with Numb and In the End. And I did like that new take. I mean, Kyle, you were in a different place in your life than I was when I was in that time as well. But because I wasn't living through it at the time, but I will say that I did like this record quite a bit actually. And so that's just my overall take on Minutes to Midnight. We'll get to the track listing right now, shall we? It's funny, all the lyrics were written by Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda. I hope that's how I say his name, right?
Yeah.
Shinoda? Okay.
Yep.
But all the music's composed by Linkin Park. So whereas the first 2 records was just all the music and lyrics were composed by Linkin Park and written by Linkin Park, this is the first one we see Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda like really, you know, start writing all the lyrics, but just by 2 guys, not the whole band, which I thought was pretty interesting. But like, what are some standout tracks for you personally, Kyle, from Minutes to Midnight?
So yeah, I just wanted to say first that I feel like this is the album that Chester really came into his own and really showed how good of a vocalist he was. The first 2 albums, don't get me wrong, he did an outstanding job on those too. But really just the range that he showed on this album, phenomenal. And, you know, contrary to like popular belief, what people think, Mike Shinoda wrote most of the lyrics for Linkin Park. A lot of people think like Chester wrote them, which he did have a hand in writing a lot of them as well. But Mike was really the driving lyricist behind the band. Standout Tracks to me, Leave Out All the Rest might be definitely top 3, might even be my number 1 Linkin Park song of all time. I love the song. It's lyrically, I think, one of their best. Hands Held High, I really like that one. It's one of the 2 raps on the album. And I enjoy, it's very passionate. You know, it's political, like anti-war song, like, you know, things that were going on at the time. What I've Done, I actually really like. For a while when it first came out, I was so sick of the song because it was all over the radio. You couldn't get away from it. Looking back on it now, I like it a lot. Bleed It Out is great. Again, that's really Bleed It Out is probably the one song on this that's like, oh, that's the classic Linkin Park sound. But maybe probably the song that stands out the most to me is Given Up. That scream that he does in Given Up is, I don't want to say it's objectively the best or anything, but it is my favorite scream ever in a rock or metal song. Just the amount of just like passion behind that scream, and just the how long he's able to hold it out for, everything about it's perfect. It's great. I also really like Valentine's Day a lot. It's definitely not
The
like
actual day.
top of the album. Oh, the song. The day
Okay.
is lame. Uh,
Hashtag all the women out there. Kyle's taken. Sorry.
but I will say the album does fall apart for me a bit after the second half. After Hands Held High, specifically the last three songs I never listened to. In Between, In Pieces, and The Little Things Give You Away, they just don't do anything for me. I honestly could stop at Valentine's Day and the album would be pretty much the same for me.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, man. I just there's so many tracks that as I grew up, and I kind of stopped listening to Linkin Park. This was one of those albums I completely wrote off. I kind of was in that I'm going into like much more extreme areas with my musical kind of repertoire, like that's not them anymore. They've changed. They're just a radio band now. What I've become is, or what I've done, is become like that, the thing that we didn't want Linkin Park to kind of head towards, and that's just kind of like, find themselves on Home Depot radio. Hashtag Home Depot radio. I love that song, but I would listen to it, and I love what I've done, later on down the road. Like I literally would hear that song, and I love the lyrics, just like kind of pump me up, and just Bleed It Out. Giving Up is, I mean, the breakdown in that almost feels like they're almost, like Kyle was saying, like bringing them back to like the quintessential kind of like Linkin Park, like sound, and a little heavy. I mean, it could be just a mosh pit song, and that drop happens in the beginning just makes me want to, jump out there and be at a concert listening to them. And I mean, so many good songs in a row. Leave It All the Rest, great song. Shadow of the Day, even Shadow of the Day is kind of one of those songs that I would normally hate, but if you're driving along and you're listening to this album, it gives you a nice, calm, peaceful feeling. It's not necessarily okay. So Leave Out Shadow of the Day is going to be there, and then the next song is going to be like a similar song to that, and then the next song is it's the quiet song that brings you down, and they bring you back up, and it kind of takes you for that ride. And like Kyle was saying, the last three songs, I don't know if it's Kyle or if it was JT that said that. Probably Kyle. I take or leave. They're not bad. They don't add anything, but they don't take away anything. Not going to remember them, but they're definitely not going to leave a sour taste in my mouth. So, I love the lack of rapping on this album. I love the direction that they kind of took here. Definitely that's a high note for me.
All around good stuff, Mike. I gotta say, the standout tracks for me personally, there's three that really are really, really great. Again, I'm gonna say this every time we talk about an album tonight. I was not familiar with Linkin Park until as far as this album goes, and the next couple, until we agreed to do this. And I got to tell you, the standout tracks for me are Given Up, Leave Out All the Rest, and What I've Done. Just those three I could put into a playlist and listen to all day long. They're that good. And the scream, Kyle, you're right. The scream though, and Given Up, undeniably incredible. That was awesome. And obviously What I've Done is, it was I was really young at the time, but I wasn't aware that it was on the radio that often. I guess I wasn't listening to it that often, I guess, but that's me. But I did really like it quite a bit. And I'll leave it all the rest as well. It was a standout track for me too, personally. But the question is, where, oh, where does Minutes to Midnight rank amongst your Linkin Park albums, Kyle?
So I put this one at number 5.
Okay.
It's good. It does fall apart, like we mentioned in the last like quarter of the album. Those ones are some of the most forgettable songs they've ever put out, in my opinion. And it's definitely different. It's a great album, but I got to put it number 5.
Mike.
I put it below 7 because it's coming back to the top at number 1. Yeah, number 1 for me. It definitely, like I said, I love where Linkin Park came from, and I would never want to change that. But I do enjoy this songwriting wise and just catchy wise, and just just being a lot less all over the place with like the feeling like in a lot of ways, I feel like when they write a song where it's like, okay, we have to have that rock part, and then we have to have that rap part come in, and then we have to go back to that rock part, come back to that rock part, and then we're gonna close it, and then the next song does the same thing. All right, we're gonna have that rap, and like that's their sound. But like when they definitely don't, it doesn't feel like so like rinse, wash, repeat kind of feeling to it, like where it's not just like, all right, here's the rap part, here's the rap part. It was just like the rapper element in it is almost over top of the parts where Chester was kind of singing, which is less like where it's like, okay, you do your part and I do my part. It's like, no, you're kind of singing alongside me and we're both singing alongside the same parts. Whereas it's not just your time, now my time, then your time, then my time, which makes it feel much more mature, blended. So yeah, I definitely put this at the number 1, and definitely by this point I was loving the sound that they had brought and liking, where they came to.
Well, Kyle and I actually coincidentally swiped right, as we see in another show. We are both at number 5 on this one, my friend. For similar reasons that Kyle said, Mike said, I don't want to reiterate too much, but it is my number 5 as well. I do like the direction they went, but it wasn't quite what Hybrid Theory and the second album was either. So, but yeah, that's my number 5. So are we all set to go to the next one?
Oh yeah.
Kyle is ready. Here we go. 1,000 Suns, the 2010 release from Linkin Park. Kyle, what do you got?
Mike, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, let me be the villain.
Yeah,
as I said to you guys, there is a guy who will be a villain on this in this meeting, and it is going to be me, because it's gonna be me. So listen, I'm going to be the guy who's the villain and hate on things that I just feel completely violate my understanding and idea of what the targets. Now, like, I have 2 separate kind of respect zones. But I respect an art piece for doing what it does and having no apologies, no pressures by the world to say, hey, do this or we're not going to listen to you anymore. So I feel like this album definitely deviated much more than the previous releases from, their original kind of sound to a more like, like alternative, I guess you could call it. Definitely felt it had a message that it was trying to deliver. That kind of, I felt maybe was more important than the music. Much more, kinds of like, how do I say, just something that comes from a area of like much more, less rock, I guess, like more electronic side. Yeah, this is my least favorite of their albums. I just gave away my rating automatically, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. No villain is here, but definitely, it definitely did not sit well with me. I lost a lot of it hit my ADD hard when I'd be listening to it, and I'm like needing something to kind of bring me back. I couldn't find a lot of these songs to find that. I did have some points of I thought the Burning in the Skies was actually a pretty decent song. It's one of the few that I could actually say kept me interested. Yeah, other than that, I don't have much to say about this album. It's just I did not enjoy it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate an album that stays true to a message and a vibe. But overall, it was a little bit more than I expected from them in the concept realm, and yeah, definitely didn't feel like Linkin Park, but another band kind of playing music, similar. Take it away.
Kyle?
I couldn't disagree more. So I will say at the time and for years when this came out, I hated this album. I thought it was awful outside of a small handful of songs. Again, like Minutes to Midnight, because Minutes to Midnight had already had me on like the track of Linkin Park's not really Linkin Park anymore. Then they released this, which is very heavily like electronic influenced. And I was just like, what is this? Me, being like high school aged Kyle was like, this isn't rock, this isn't what I want. However, years later, I revisited it because my best friend loved this album. He's like, no, you gotta give it another chance. He's like, he always loved it from the minute it came out. And I was like, you're crazy. So I tried it again and I was like, dude, you're right. I love this thing. I love concept albums. I think it's very well done. The sampling in it, especially like specifically when it comes to like speeches and stuff, is great. I love the return to Mike rapping a lot of the songs. And Mike does he does a great job on it. And I don't see them like clashing a lot in terms of the styles as much as I remembered when I was, a kid. I was like, why it sounds all over the place. But then I don't really think that's the case. I mean, Iridescent is a beautiful song. But I mean, I'll talk about the songs when we come to the track list. But as an album, looking back on it now, I love the experimentation in this. I think it really worked. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my thoughts. Is I love this thing. I know it is like one of the go-to punching bags for the band, but I'll defend this one forever. I really enjoy this.
Oh God, we left it up to me.
Join me, JT. Join me on the dark side or the light side, I should say.
Oh man. Truthfully, well, I must be the deciding factor here. This is really bad. Because I genuinely speaking, I liked what I heard. Truthfully, if I were like would I go back to it again and again? Probably not. I do like the concept album feel of it. There are some nice. I like the concept of it in general. I do. Kyle and I are both the same age. I love concept albums. I think that they're some of the best albums of all time are concept albums, truthfully. But this one was like, just what a jump. Well, the first one, the third album was 2007. This was 2010. Again, I was 11 or 12. I count math, whatever. I think, but I don't remember it ever being on the radio. I don't remember anything about it. So I was going like completely blindfolded, like head over, like feet into the deep end of the pool on this one. But I gotta tell you, I overall I liked what I heard. Was it a different experience from Numb in the end? And when you're, yes, completely different. But did I like it overall? Yeah, I liked what I heard overall. Now, would I say, hey, Mike, would you want to hear this? No, you know what I mean? But I liked what I heard, and as a first-time listener of this album from start to finish, it was actually I liked it overall. Truthfully, that's my best way I could put it, without going like too much into detail, because I want to get into the track listing and stuff as well. But yeah, I liked it. I definitely liked it. Let's go down to the track listing, shall we? Let's just read off the track listing to everyone here. So all tracks are listed by Linkin Park, and track 11 was written by Linkin Park and Martin Luther King Jr.
He was on the turntables.
He was on the turntable. There is no doubt in my mind that you got MLK Jr. to be on this record, Linkin Park.
He's
Of
secretly
course.
living on an island with Elvis and Tupac over in the
Yes.
over in the Pacific somewhere.
They're not dead, guys. They're just on an island. It's
That's
okay.
great.
But let me read off the track listing, Charlie. So the Requiem, the Radiance, is that how you say that? Radiance?
Yeah.
Whatever. Burning in the Skies, Empty Spaces, When They Come For Me, Robot Boy. I'm gonna butcher this really bad. Horniana del Marudo. I think I butchered that. Just don't kill me, guys. Waiting for the End, Blackout, Wretches and Kings, Wisdom, Justice, and Love. Thank you, Dr. King. Irresident, Fallout, The Catalyst, and The Messenger. Who would like to go first on their favorite tracks? Mike?
Oh, I honestly did that one. You know what? I'll be honest with you. Give it up to Martin Luther King for track 11. I personally feel like that is probably. I mean, I love the samples in this. I love the old wartime feel of the speeches. I definitely feel like this would be a cool album to listen to, like passively, like where it's, you're not really paying attention to like the songs or like what's sticking in your mind, but it's just kind of like, you're writing or you're doing something where you need some kind of like, I wouldn't say background sound, but I would definitely say something to fill in some spaces. There was some like jarring noises, like pretentious kind of like, yeah, let's put like the sound of a printer, like burr, 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 like and this is the problem with some of these albums, is that I feel at this point, Chester's doing his own album. Mike Shinoda's got his own thing. You even have some other of the band members kind of doing their own thing. This album felt like an identity crisis. It felt like we don't really know where we're headed. We don't want to do the same thing we did on the previous albums, but we don't want to necessarily do like a blending of like new Linkin Park with old and come up with like we want to do something completely new that like really sets us apart. And those albums can be dangerous because they tend to be a little they're so free that they fall so flat that nobody remembers them or can relate to them, and that's where I feel like this album comes away with a lot of the old school and some of the new school. Like Kyle can appreciate that complete freedom and change of direction, and I appreciate the freedom, but I also am not. It's not the memorable like will it hang around for the rest of time and be stuck in the kind of like the pages of music. Like I feel like it's definitely gonna its entire idea what it was trying to say, less its songs and their quality of, once again, blending the old, blending the new, and finding a happy medium between the two that doesn't alienate one side or alienate the other. And I feel like it does the complete opposite. It alienates one side and it feeds the other side who want to hear something fresh and new from Linkin Park. It could have been called anyone. It could have been from any band, not even Linkin Park. It could have been just Chester Bennington's separate project or Mike Shinoda's. It could have been that, and I probably would have been like, okay, like this is a different sound that this new act is going for, but to be under the name Linkin Park kind of is what really hurts it here. It leaves it trying to chase the tails of the past music, and blending isn't there. It's one lopsided. So yeah, just overall, that's my general opinion on it.
Kyle, you're up.
Yeah. So song wise, this has a lot of my favorite Linkin Park songs. Just a lot of my top 10 comes from this album. Wretches and Kings, absolutely love it. Mike, you're talking about how it feels like a wartime album. Very much so. The speeches, it is insanely well done how they incorporated those in there. I will say, when I went back and listened to it again, end of last week, whenever it was leading up to this, it holds up remarkably well, especially in the current days where we're closer to nuclear apocalypse, and we have been since like the 1960s. So, and with that, with that fear on people's minds and everything, still, it holds up very well. That it's considering that's what the album's about. Now, other songs, When They Come For Me, another all-time favorite of mine, but Iridescent is such a beautiful song, incredible. Waiting for the End is amazing. Burning in the Skies. Pretty much all the actual songs that are on here are top tier Linkin Park. Where it does fall a little flat for me, but it doesn't drag it down for me necessarily, because I think it works in terms of what they were doing, is a lot of the interludes are just kind of whatever. Like, you're always going to skip when you go on Spotify, you throw Linkin Park on shuffle, you're going to skip past them. They work in the context of the concept album, not so much outside of it. I will also never defend, though, Empty Spaces as a track. Why you would put 18 seconds of pretty much silence as a track on an album, I'll never get that thought process. That's stupid. And
Empty Spaces, man. You don't understand the artistic view.
It's artistic, yeah. In terms of songs, though, the only song I don't like on this is Blackout. I don't know what they were going for on that one. They tried to go for like an electronic hardcore / metal song. It didn't work for me. It's way too long. If it was like 2 minutes, I could kind of see what they were going for as maybe like here's our hardcore electronic interlude type thing. But it's not. It's a 4.5 minute song that really doesn't work for me. Other than that, I love what they were doing here. Some of my all-time favorites on this one.
Wow. Again, I have to be the deciding figure here. Between someone who didn't like it, someone who really likes it. I got to be the middle man here.
Robot Boy. Please,
Clearly, Robot Boy is the best Linkin Park song.
Also, my nickname in high school happens to be Robot. No.
Oh my god. Some standout tracks for me personally. Burning in the Skies, because I'm trying to think back to what it was. Burning in the Skies, Wretched and Kings, and also for some reason number 14, The Catalyst, stood out to me. I don't know why, it just did. Like it just I was like, oh, that's cool. You're right though, Empty Spaces. It just sounds like they were trying to fill 18 seconds of empty space. But bing. Anyways, that's really bad joke. But no, Empty Spaces is not my favorite song on the record. Don't worry. But it's like the 18 seconds, man. It just made the whole record of like it's satisfied that everything to me.
I think that might be Mike's favorite song.
Yeah, Empty Spaces. I was like, my favorite part.
Your favorite part is over. Empty Spaces. It's 18 seconds of pure bliss.
Pure bliss.
But those three for me: Burning the Skies, Wretched and Kings, and The Catalyst really stand out to me. As honorable mention, I'd say Iridescent.
Oh, I thought you were having a stroke there, brother.
I was gonna butcher it really badly.
I literally have 9-1 on my phone.
Hold your breath. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Take a deep breath. No pressure.
Yeah, we were worried about.
No, but those four. So track 13, 10, 12, and 14, which are those songs there. But the question is, gentlemen, where does this rank amongst your Linkin Park albums? Let's start with Mike.
Believe it or not, this is number 6 for me. I know you think of what could get worse, but I feel like you already know, Kyle. You already know where I'm headed for that. And I do have the worst one. I do have points for concepts. I do have points for beautiful, so music is like, okay, here's my chorus, here's my bridge, here's my beginning, here's my end. Some of these songs tend to kind of have like, kind of a floating quality to them where they're not really, they're being like a catchy, quick song that has to stay within a certain amount of minutes and whatever. So that being said, I have to put it down at 6. It still has a place in the artistic side of things, but less like for me, like the straight up like, okay, here's my song and whatever. So I also wanted to rename it 1,000 Skips, which I told you guys in the message. I emailed the band. I haven't heard back yet. Still waiting.
Kyle, what do you got?
All right. Well,
Don't do it.
I got this one at number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
Number 2. I think it could have been even better had they had more actual songs and the interludes were toned down a little bit. But I love it. I love concept albums. I love when artists try things like this. Wish I appreciated it more, when I was younger and when it was actually a like recent, which I think a lot of Linkin Park fans did the same thing. They absolutely hated it when it came out. And I see online as the years go by, more and more people being like, oh, this is actually a really cool album. And I love that. I love that for artists. I love when they do things just out of left field like that.
See, for me personally, it's at the bottom of. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually my number 3. Because I actually really. Yes, it's sort of my mic's in shock over there. He's like,
Baby the villain, guys. Once again,
way higher than I thought it would be.
I know. Like I genuinely liked it a lot. I mean, were there things like the skips, the interludes? Yeah, they kind of got me. But
yes, I got in your head.
Damn it, Mike! It got in my head. No, but I actually really like this album. I mean, for like an introduction to a different side of Linkin Park, I thought it was pretty good. That's my number 3. Gentlemen, are we ready to go to our next album, which is called Living Things from year 2012?
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's yellow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh wait, that's yellow, right? Wait, what? What do you got? Who wants to start on this one? You want to start?
I can start this one.
All right, sure.
Oh, you want me to start it? Or?
Yeah, you can start if you want.
Mike, go ahead.
Sure. Why not? Why not? I actually really enjoyed this album, and I know you guys wouldn't expect. This is a very different sound than Linkin Park is, but the songs were super catchy and crazy. I heard crazy things while listening to this. So now I'm coming at this from more mature Mike versus like back in the day, I would have just ripped this to shreds, man. I would be like, you screw this album. It's not Linkin Park. Put Linkin Park on. That would have been me. But like hearing this song, it had very catchy songs, very cool melodies, very like hooks that got stuck in your head. And it just kept them flowing, like song after song after song. The songs were very memorable, and I actually was very surprised by that. I didn't really like the fact that it had kind of some of the like beats and like the how to say it, the keyboards kind of felt like very kind of hip hop feel to them, I guess you could say. But I really, it really grew on me, and it just had a lot of just really good melodies. And I think that's what, you can take a song, you can take any music anywhere at any time, and you can say, I don't like this because it has this kind of sound, but you cannot deny a song that touches you. You feel like it has a memorable quality to it, and it kind of it makes you feel sad or it makes you feel happy. Those things can never go away. You can always have music be more modern sounding or more produced a certain way with different sound effects, but you cannot take away a certain essence of music that touches you, your soul. So that is something that this album brought to the table and had some great songs on it. Now, interesting, there is a song on this. If you could bring up that track listing for me, I want to make note of was it Lies, Greed, and Misery or Burn It Down? One of them, Burn It Down. It must have been. It might have been. It literally sounded just like Up All Night to Get Lucky by Daft Punk, but came out before that song. I actually looked it up. The one that's like
unfortunately I do.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't like that one. Oh, okay.
Only because it got overplayed.
Okay.
Only because they got overplayed to death.
Fair enough. But I was like, wow, I always thought all these. So when I was working my other job, Famous Footwear, #Famous Footwear, I literally was in there listening to music, and every single artist is copying off of Up All Night to Get Lucky, that the same kind of chords and the same kind of beat, and literally all of them were doing it. But you would imagine that like Linkin Park would be the one who kind of before them or kind of like literally probably influenced them to put out a song that sounds like a Linkin Park song. So kudos to them for that. And and exactly what you're saying, I didn't have this album to like beat into my head and replay. This was a completely first listening of this as an assignment for this recording, and like everything I listened to was the first time, and like it's amazing how that can change your perception of something, the way the world around you beating you senseless with it. You go to the gas pump, they're playing it in the gas pump. Like, why is my gas pump playing me anything? Like, I want gas and I want to go. Why are you telling me to go and buy this new album? Like, I shouldn't be being influenced by things of that manner. And we live in a tragic world, is fawning for our attention at every single, trying to get our money rather than letting us come willingly. So unfortunately that's where we're at. But yeah, I really enjoyed this album. Lots of songs got stuck in my head, crossed the whole thing. I don't feel like there was ever really a point where I was superly like disappointed, besides a couple filler songs. And yeah, like I enjoyed it. So
Kyle, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike. It's a very catchy album. I like this album a lot. It still has that experimental feel that A Thousand Suns had in a lot of places, but it's like they took the criticism that a lot of the fans had about that one, and they made that sound more like Linkin Park. Sound like more, in a way, more focused. Like, all right, how can we take A Thousand Suns and the things that we did right on that album and try to make it more in line with what people want from us as a band. And I think, overall they did it very well. I remember Burn It Down being on the radio very frequently at that time. One thing I do like about this album a lot is, in my opinion, the pop music of the early 2010s, like 2010 through 2015, the upbeat, fun pop music, some of the best of all time. It's so good. The production on those songs, everything, the sounds used, everything was so good, fun, upbeat. They have a lot of that production on this album, a lot of those sounds, which I love. I do think that, again, the last half of the album, maybe a little less than half, maybe last quarter, drops the ball again. But the songs, they really, really front loaded this one. Like, specifically this album, I feel like they front loaded with, all right, here's like 5 like great songs. They're all going to get stuck in your head. And then here's like a couple others if you made it this far into the album. But yeah, again, Mike's rapping tends to be a standout for me. Not to say any of the other things are to be written off. Like, Chester's vocals again on this one are great. They managed to put some emotional songs into the album as well, and I think it's very well done.
Yeah, I mean, can we get a hell yeah? Like, hell yeah. Like, generally speaking, I mean, this is, again, we have 2 more albums to talk about, but I'm going to say it again. This is an album that I truthfully, I didn't know was around, and I really, really liked what I heard in general. I mean, for the first time ever listening to any of these songs, it was just an awesome. I mean, you could definitely tell it was 2012 and not 2003, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Like with that kind of feel. But I mean, it definitely, like, I was like, what? My first thought was, why? When I finished the album, I was like, why haven't I heard of this sooner? Like, because I was like, damn, why didn't I listen to this album when it came out back in 2012? I should have been a Linkin Park OG fan at this point, like. But it was overall really solid, really, really Burn It Down. We'll get to the track in a second, but Burn It Down, the singles they released, I thought were pretty good. Actually, really good, truthfully. And I do agree with what Kyle said, how they took I feel like they took the criticism with 1,000 Suns, or in Mike's case, 1,000 Skips, and they took that criticism and said, all right, let's make something a little bit different, but let's follow in the same footsteps a little bit. I do like the producer, Rick Rubin. He's a very, very famous producer. If you're not familiar with him, just Google him and look at the albums he's produced. He's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's get down to the track listing, shall we? Just fantastic tracks. I agree with I'm going to read them off, but you kind of like, yeah, you are correct. This is very front heavy, like the first 6 or so. Lost in Echo, In My Remains, Burn It Down, Lies, Greed, Misery, I'll Be Gone, Castle of Glass, Victimized, Roads Untraveled, Skin to Bone, Until It Breaks, a 1-minute instrumental called Tinfoil, and Powerless. So who wants to share their favorite tracks first? Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I agree with Kyle. This is a front loaded, lots of very memorable tracks. Beginning, just a note, something that Linkin Park kind of became synonymous with is, like I was saying before, is kind of feeling like the screaming need to find their identity, like going from like soft to like extremely loud screaming, like yeah, like, and you'll see more of this in the Hunting Party. This very desperate need to define oneself by kind of touching on multiple different styles of music, maybe, or even just the aggression, the message of war, like down with like kind of the oppression. So Victimized feels very much so like that kind of just it feels a little pretentious. I like it, but at times it feels a little cringy. Like, yeah, like I'm gonna show you guys that we mean business and we're still like our old self by like putting a song that completely like goes against all the songs on the album to just like really like show you where you've had enough. And it's like you can do that in a way not trying to like appear like you're punk rock or you're like heavy metal, you know what I mean? In the middle of a calm sea, you know, it's like it definitely felt like very self-aware. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it's like, yeah, the front load of this album is good, and then as you go through some of the ends, they're not bad songs. They're just kind of it's like the final wave goodbye to the just very beginning memorable stuff that you're going to play over and over again, and kind of calm yourself down to the resting note. It's the tracks at the end. I mean, Powerless is kind of felt like it might have been the end of the album might have been a good place for it, but yeah, overall this is just very calculated in its design to show the maturity of songwriting, but yet throw some curveballs at you.
God, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo the same thoughts on that one. But I will say, though, if the entire album maintained what was going on in those first about 4 songs, those first 4 songs are all incredible. Like, that run of songs is great. If it maintained that all the way through, this could have easily been my number 1. Yeah. But it didn't. It really... Like, I'll Be Gone is good. Castle of Glass is great. I really like Victimized. But after that, it just, like, Roads Untraveled is good. Could be better. Like, it's just kind of forgettable. Skin to Bone is I even wrote that down as well, like my low points of the album. I really didn't like that one. Until It Breaks is, it's good. It's there. Tinfoil, I thought was pointless. Outside of their first album, outside of Cure for the Itch on Hybrid Theory, I've thought their instrumentals have, for the most part, really served no purpose, and they're just kind of there. That's always been something about the band that drove me insane, is their need to put instrumentals on there when they're not really interesting instrumentals for the most part. And Powerless is a good closer. But I mean, overall, Burn It Down was great. In My Remains, Lost in the Echo, like that run of songs again are my top 4 on the album, the first 4. I wish that it kept that speed going throughout the whole thing, or maybe even if it spaced those out in the track list more. It just, once you have an album that has such a strong start and then kind of just fizzles out, it's like, oh man, it feels like a disappointment when you get to the end, even though there's some really good songs.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like 100% I agree with everything. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed everything in the front, and is kind of middle to end is kind of a little less memorable. And yeah, I think yeah, I pretty much agree. And I like the mixture. I feel like I would have enjoyed a couple more songs on this album to kind of pull back into the old Linkin Park sound. I think it might violate um, their journey to become the new band that they are today versus who they were. But I don't know. I don't mind a little bit of an old kind of demonstration of like where they came from, and nothing. The songs that blended, well, it can't feel too out of place, and that's all bands struggle is how can I show who I was and who I am in one showing without giving into one or the other. And I feel like a lot of them have no desire to show who they were because they've already done it enough. Just done with it, and sometimes the fans aren't done with it. And that's the real question: who matters more, the artists or the fans? And that's a question that we will not be able to answer at this current time frame. So I'm gonna pass it off to JT and let him.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So we're all in agreement here. The first probably 4 or 5 songs, even if you want to go as far as say 6, it's a great first. It's almost as if it came out on CD. Just ignore the second half. Like instead of flipping it over, just stay on the one side. You know what I mean? The first 5 tracks for me personally, the first 5 are killer. I mean, but then when you get to Castle Glass is actually pretty good. But like we are our continuing conversation here is the second half of the album, or the last quarter of the album just doesn't. Powerless is good, but the rest of the album, for the most part, in Linkin Park's case, is what I've seen so far, is with our conversations, is that the last quarter of the album, they don't necessarily fall apart, but they just have a lot of some filler to an extent. But they're still good songs, though. Don't get me wrong, but they're just not they don't catch you as much as the first 4 or 5 songs on this record do. But the question is, gentlemen, where does Living Things rank from ELO? Just kidding, Linkin Park.
Number 1.
Where does it rank amongst your Linkin Park albums? We're going to start with Mike on this one.
This is tough because the Hunting Party and Living Things I felt were for me almost just neck and neck. Which I already kind of gave away my other rating, but I don't care because I don't play the rules. All right, I'm going with number 4, just edged out the Hunting Party. So I'm gonna put them at 4. Living Things, definitely appreciate it. It's got a little bit of, touches your soul a little more than some of the other kinds of vibes from their past albums and present albums. So yeah, sitting there at number 4.
Kyle, what do you got? Where are you at?
Wow, Mike, we have our first agreement.
Yes,
Also
Kyle,
put it
digital
at
high
number
five.
4 because I had to put it above Minutes to Midnight just because of how strong.
No.
Yeah, just because of how strong those initial 4 to 5, 4 to 6 songs are. That run is just so good.
Yeah.
Some of their best work, in my opinion. I really liked this era of the band, so yeah, I had to put it number 4.
I put it number 7. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm just kidding.
You got number 4.
I got you guys so good for a split second. No, actually, you're gonna think I'm crazy, gentlemen. All 3 of us swiped right in this case, as to quote our other show. We all put it number 4.
Yes.
Nice.
Let's go.
A collective
Number
4.
4, baby.
Perfect middle ground Linkin Park album.
4's for us.
We all can agree that this is our number 4 from ELO. I mean Linkin Park.
Linkin Park.
Living Thing, whatever. No, I'm just kidding. This is my number 4 as well, for reasons we just mentioned and more. So yeah, solid record overall. Are we ready to go to the second to last album?
Let's do it.
All righty. Let's talk about the Hunting Party. Who wants to go first? You want to go first, Kyle? We'll let Mike go the last 2 times.
Kyle,
I'll go first on this one because to me, all right, I'm going to set the scene for 2014 when this album came out. It was summertime. I was after Living Things, I was yeah, it was a really good album. Like Linkin Park, it's great. I picked up Hunting Party, played it in a long car ride the day I got it, and I was like, damn, this is awesome. They're back to their like heavy sound. Is their heaviest album yet, which it is. It's definitely their heaviest album. With that said, looking back on it years later, it feels very much like a identity crisis, midlife crisis album, where they were like, oh well, how about we just do this for the fans that have been yelling at us to do this, and whatever, we could take it or leave it, it might not be. And honestly, I think their album following this proved to me that this might not have been exactly what they wanted to do, but they felt they had to do it. Now with that said, there's some excellent songs on here. Like, I don't want to discount that at all. It's a very good album. It's a very strong album. I still really enjoy it. It also has features on it, which I am not too into that. The featured vocals for the chorus of All for Nothing really bring that song in particular down for me. Tom Morello on it, it's just, why? I don't see the need for it. And who else was on it? I can't remember who else was
Aaron
on it.
Malakian from
Yeah,
System of a Down.
I did enjoy that one. But for me, it's like, that's not Linkin Park. That it's essentially a System of a Down song. It's essentially a System of a Down song played by Linkin Park with one member of System of a Down. And the guest rap on Guilty all the same. It was all right. I would have preferred no guest, features on it. I have nothing against features, but I feel like this, like around that time frame, is when features started to be like the thing to do, and it's just gotten worse and worse and snowballed to where we are today, where everyone has countless features on every album. I don't think they were needed. I feel like this album was just very, very much a identity crisis, midlife crisis period for the band, where they're like, oh well, people don't like the electronic sounds. Let's just go back to just straight rock. We're gonna make it the heaviest thing we've done, and that's that. It's, I don't know. Looking back on it, I still enjoy it a lot. The songs and the songwriting is good, but it's just not really what I wanted from a late era Linkin Park album, I guess.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's funny. It's almost like it's everything you, I mean, now you're talking to the guy who this should be number one,
Yeah.
his album.
Yeah.
It should be his number one album. And that's what separates me from the gatekeeper, heavy metal kind of like elitists out there who are like, yeah, it has crazy structure changes. It's punk rock, it's new metal, it's electronic, it's rap, it's a band who wants to prove that they transcend their kind of previous releases in there, and that there's that doing exactly what you just spoke about, blending all kinds of different styles that they've previously touched on together in one big milkshake, and it's like, drink this, you're gonna like this, and it's like and in turn it becomes a self-aware album of what that intention is, almost to a fault, where it feels desperate to validate itself through the kind of inclusion of all these different voices are coming in to like say, you guys are, like you're diverse, you're heavy, you're not just your past self, you're undefinable. You know what I mean? And that and in that turn, it kind of it lost me in the sense that it was trying too hard. And I do love myself the complexity. I do love myself the change ups and the song structure and the like real challenge to the band to really put some songs where like you got some riffs changing and directions, and even tries to do the whole like, here's the song and then here comes the rap part, just like they used to do in the back of the day, like in Guilty All the Same. You have like, it's so funny, you'll have this and then it'll be like, then you hear that typical Linkin Park guitar sound, and you hear the rap start, and you're like, oh, it's the old Linkin Park, yes, like they're doing this, the here comes like the entrance of the rapper over the part, and it's there. It's just it feels so forced and really trying to validate the sound of the band, and it is a midlife crisis album for sure. I appreciate it on many levels, and other levels I feel it misses the mark, almost like it's trying so hard to hit it that it loses the natural quality of it, and it's unfortunate that that can happen. But I still tell you what, you put this album up against some other bands crisis albums, the Identity Crisis, and it blows them out of the water. It's just, for Linkin Park, it'll be a good album to hear, and it's got some real memorable songs on it. It just can't hold that same kind of quality as the previous releases, for sure.
Yeah, and before we move on, before I forget, I just want to point out, you said, it lacks that natural feeling, and that I think that's a big thing here, is that it doesn't feel like a natural progression of the band. Like I love seeing a band progress throughout their albums. And at the time I was just thinking like, yeah, this is so cool. They went back to this. And like you said, coming from like longtime fans, logistically, this should be our number one album. Like, this is what people for years were asking for. But when it comes down to it, and when it was released, it was just kind of like, this doesn't feel natural. This doesn't feel like what you guys actually wanted to do, what you guys actually want. And maybe they did, who's to say? But it's just the feeling I get when I listen to it is like, especially where it is in their discography and what came before it and after it, it just feels like this isn't what they wanted to do. It's not a natural progression. There's nothing natural about it. It sounds very forced. And I think even lyrically, it's probably their least like deep lyrics that they have. The lyrics on this, for the most part, very like surface level on a lot of the songs, whereas every other album that they've had has had like lyrical depth to at least most of the songs. This one just really lacked a lot of that.
I don't need to say anything else. You guys pretty much hit it on the head. Like, just straight up, there's nothing that I need to say that has not been already been said about the Hunting Party. Other than like, the only thing I could possibly add is like, about the features. I mean, we'll get to the track listing in a second, but like the features just didn't really do it for me. They didn't really do anything for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, that sound is like back to what they started out as, but like it definitely, we're all in agreement, it is a midlife crisis album for sure. There's no getting around it whatsoever. But let's get down to the track listing for a sec, shall we? So let me read the track listing. And the first album to features, which I just want to say, featuring Drake should make a song with Pitbull, and 3 other people in it just have a giant mega crap song.
Jesus.
Just saying, it's gonna be Drake, Usher, Pitbull, and on top of that, we're gonna bring Justin Bieber into the mix as well. There you go. That's our mega song. That's the next
You
number.
might as well you gotta get DJ Khaled in on that.
Yes, and DJ Khaled's gonna put
just yell his name in the middle of it.
Yes.
Yeah, DJ. And then have Little John
Someone
like,
get on
yeah,
that. Someone get on that. That's a gold. I'll sign my papers right now as your idea creator right there, and I'll split the money with these 2 gentlemen right here.
And
anyway.
hashtag or shout out to Home Depot Center for being the place they play
Yep.
their bonus tracks on. We should have been there, boys. Free tickets.
Bonus tracks for the Xbox Deluxe Edition.
Oh, is this sponsored by Mountain Dew? Is it sponsored by Mountain Dew and Pepsi One?
Oh my God. Well, before we get off track any quicker, Keys to the Kingdom, All for Nothing, featuring Paige Hamilton. Guilty All the Same, featuring Rakim. The Summoning, War, Wastelands, Until It's Gone, Rebellion, featuring Darren. How do you say his last name?
Malakian,
thank you. Mark the Graves, Drew Bar, instrument. It's just an instrumental featuring Tom Morello. Actually, that's kind of funny. But Final Masquerade and A Line in the Sand. What are some standout tracks to you, Mike?
I mean, Guilty All the Same. When I heard that, I still think it's a great song. It's probably almost up there with like some of I had a top 5 already, but it's just right outside that top 5 for me. Coming in like somewhere in there. But I mean, yeah, other than that, like I loved Until It's Gone. I think All for Nothing's a decent track. It's got like a lot of the middle area. It's fun. It's got some interesting, very unusual kind of directions it comes from and it goes to. If out of all the albums, I think it's the most challenging album I think they've done, where they're testing their abilities to write some very dynamically changing sounds here, and it's definitely not an easy thing to pull off. So yeah, other than that, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the album thoroughly throughout, but those are some of my standout tracks.
Kyle, standout tracks to you?
For me, Keys to the Kingdom is a major standout for me. It's actually my favorite album opener that they've had.
Okay.
I think it's a great way to start the album. War, that's definitely up there. Wastelands, love that one. Mike's rapping specifically on that. Rebellion, but like I said, it's more of just a System of a Down song with the Linkin Park members playing it. One thing about this album that I do really love is that it introduced Mike Shinoda as a singer and not just a rapper. He sang on Rebellion. He did the leads on, I believe, other than the chorus. And I think a couple others as well, but really I really enjoyed that change up. That was nice to hear. Final Masquerade, that I liked that more. It was a standout to me originally. I don't go back to it as much as I did back in the day, but it's really lyrically, I think, the peak of the album. I don't care for A Line in the Sand. I don't care for Mark the Graves. Yet again, the end of the album kind of
far an ending.
Yeah. Drawbar was stupid to me. Like, sorry, but I don't know why we needed an instrumental featuring Tom Morello. It just feels jarring. I don't know.
Exactly.
I forgot to mention Rebellion is one of my other favorite songs. That is a great song. Although I do agree, it feels very channeling System Down and some of the crazy times I still appreciate it.
And to touch on, I forgot to say it after Mike gave his thoughts, but to touch on the fact Mike had said, yeah, it's way better than most artists' midlife crisis albums. 100%, because most bands' midlife crisis albums bring them to a sound that's not like them. Like you have like Motley Crue's Generation Swine album back in like the late 90s, which was them trying to do a grunge album, and it was horrendous. I mean, a lot of those hair metal bands doing that, and it was terrible, never worked out. You have a lot of like rock bands trying to do pop things. Linkin Park's version of midlife crisis was, let's just go heavy. let's just do what people actually want from us, whereas most other artists are like, let's do what we think the mainstream wants, not what our fans are yelling at us to do. So I enjoyed that. At least it definitely has some good songs. I don't think it's the greatest thing they've ever done.
Now, question: do they not list the writers on those songs because they didn't write them, or because they just assumed that they did?
They did. All the tracks up here were Linkin
except
Park.
where noted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's just weird because they didn't do that before.
I think it's just a matter of who sets up the Wikipedia page.
Yeah, for those who don't know, we pull it up on Wikipedia.
Donate to Wikipedia. Shout out to Wikipedia.
Shout out to the free database of the world.
That's it.
Standout tracks for me. Mike, did you go yet?
Oh yeah, I went. Yep.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to skip over you, but
you did good.
All right, Keys to the Kingdom, truthfully. War Until It's Gone, and I agree with you. Rebellion is just a System of a Down song. But yeah, but those four for me. Keys to the Kingdom. What was the second one I said? Keys for Kingdom, War, Until It's Gone, and Rebellion. Yeah, those are pretty much my
Guilty all the same. What?
What?
The rap is what
I said. You didn't like Guilty all the same.
The feature, Rakim's feature on Guilty all the same is what dragged it down for me.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of his rap, and I love the song until that part comes on.
Yeah. I mean, and then that's just for me personally. I mean, that's one of the things that dragged it down for me a little bit was the featuring. I was like, why do we? You're Linkin Park. This is your 6th album. Why do you want to just throw features on it? I mean, I get you want to be like somewhat more creative, I guess, but just for me, they didn't like quite work. But the
Midlife
question is,
crisis.
it is midlife crisis, Mike.
Yeah.
But the question is, gentlemen, where does this rank amongst your Linkin Park albums? Let's start with Kyle again.
I put it at number 6.
Okay.
I do enjoy it more than Meteora. I know, crazy.
What?
But yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, just like we said multiple times, a midlife crisis album, and I think it was a step backwards for them at the time. And number 6.
Mike.
I already told you mine. It just got edged out by Living Things. I would probably say Living Things probably edges out more than just an edge out. But I mean, in the scope of like listening to a record and actually enjoying. So that's once again, I said there's some albums I respect on a originality level, and there's other songs I respect on just straight up songs that are interesting and go somewhere and take you on a journey. And then sometimes they do both of those in one album. I feel they do both of those in Living Things, and they only do one of those things on the Hunting Party, and that's just songs that have interesting stuff, but they don't take you away on some journey. It just shows you, hey, let's showcase our abilities to write heavy songs, but really don't have a ton of like real super meaning to them or whatever, like meaningful melodies. Just kind of had lots of complexity, which I appreciate. So I definitely put it at number 5. And we all know where the new album is gonna go. Kyle, you know it. All right. Foreshadowing.
Oh no. This is actually you guys went, right? I want to make sure you guys are good.
Yep.
All right. This is my number 6 as well. So I agree with Kyle on the similar viewpoints as well. Just what killed it for me, and look, don't get me wrong, the sound is great and everything like that, but what killed me was the some of the choices of features and some of the choices like that instrumental with Tom Morello. I mean, you and I, Kyle and I, can both agree, like it's definitely not. It's like, why is it there? It's an instrumental featuring Tom Morello. You could have done so much more with that, though. But it is a midlife crisis album for sure. But it is my number 6 personally. So
a good name for a song on the album, "Cry for Validation." That would be a cool name. Like it's just like all of those artists on the same track together, like doing a "We Are the World" kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like we all appreciate you, Linkin Park. Just no need to like reach out for any kind of idea of who you are. You are you. Like I think that'd be "Cry for Validation." Let's make that happen.
It's like they're fishing for compliments. Like, tell us you're doing a good job, please.
Without telling us directly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. But are we all set to go to our last album of the night?
Train's pulling into the station, my friend. You're the conductor. Choo choo.
Boy.
It was gonna be a fun one.
One More Light, their most recent album from 2017. Who wants to go first?
I think I'll let Mike take this one.
Mike, what do you got?
Yeah. Just so disappointing. It really, it's just so confined by its desire to kind of deliver these really soft radio friendly songs. And I feel so bad because it had it had the opportunity to blend, but it did nothing but just kind of pop me right in the jaw with the pop. It just kind of it just lost any attempt at kind of capturing any of the previous identities and songs. And songs they're not terrible as if another band wrote them. If you just put this down as another band, it would have been like, okay, some real contemporary, kind of just doesn't really want to blow your mind. It's more of I feel like this album is more of a because I want to album, more so than the fans will have any kind of say in this. It's like, look, man, this is what we do. You'll like it or not. Once again, kind of harkening back to the Def Leppard album. It's like, does Linkin Park need to prove themselves by making this album? no, this is a goodbye, and I hate to say that, a goodbye to a lot of the criticisms that is, oh, you need to play music that sounds like your old self, but also play what you kind of want to do. No, this is what we want to do, and that's it. And I appreciate that, and I applaud you. But once again, I'm from the old school. I'm the old head of the channel, and I have to be the guy that is the sides of tradition over kind of evolution to a place that I feel could have just been under a side project name. So yeah, unfortunately, it's just I'll be honest with you. One more light. Is that the last song? Or is that
the last song, I believe?
that song, bro? Seriously,
Yeah.
I listened to and the live version of it that they had at Jimmy Kimmel's
The Chris Cornell
little
tribute.
dude, like
Oh,
to this day,
incredible.
I'll watch it
Chills.
7 or 8 times a month sometimes when it pops up on something, or it breaks my heart. It is
Chills every time.
amazingly lyrically. It could possibly be in my top 5. It may very well be in my top 5 songs, and for that reason alone, it's important that it's on this album and what tribute it makes. So, I mean, hats off to them and making one of their best quiet songs ever. But it's just not enough to save this one from kind of the greater musical journey that I think like it's taking at the expense of their previous.
Kyle, I'm very curious to hear what you have to say.
All right. So entirely different sound. Right. This sounds entirely different than anything they've ever put out. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think this is their deepest album, lyrically speaking, and that's what speaks to me a lot about music is lyrics. I'm a big lyrics and vocals person, and I think this one really shines. It's also crazy to me to think that this album is 5 years old already. Feels like just yesterday this came out. Now, I'm going to spoil my list because if anyone's been keeping score, we all know there's only one spot open on my list. This is my number 1.
Oh God, no!
No!
Yes.
Hold on.
Hear
What
me
kind
out.
of rope do I want to use? No.
Hear me out.
Oh, that was
So-
bad. I'm sorry. I take that off. Yeah, sorry.
Tasteless.
I'm sorry.
So
Mike, no, I'm just kidding.
this is, since it came out, shortly after it came out, it made its way to my number 1. This is before, everything with Chester. A lot of people kind of bandwagoned onto this album after his death. They listened to it again after and were like, oh, these lyrics are so sad, not realizing that Mike Shinoda actually wrote a majority of these lyrics. Chester only wrote like 2 of the songs on here. Now, people then retroactively are like, oh, it's such a better album than I gave it credit for. And I honest to God think that the reception of this album and the people were not just negative to this album when it came out. People were viciously against this. And Chester really took that to heart. Like you could see it in interviews, he was lashing out at people about it. I think if people just accepted what they were doing and be like, yeah, maybe it's not for me, but I'm not going to like be an ass about it. Maybe things would have turned out a little bit differently. There's no way to know that for sure, but it definitely, you could tell in interviews, really got to the guy, which I don't blame him. There's a lot of heart put into this album. And I'm sure they knew this wasn't going to go over too well. And after the hunting party, if this was what followed Living Things, I think people would have been way more open to it. I think it's the fact that it came from after the hunting party where they're like, we're going to release the heaviest thing we've released and then the softest thing we've ever released. I will also say it's a damn near perfect pop album. It's not a rock album. It's not a rap album. Let's just call it what it is. This is a pop album. But it's damn near perfect. And that's insanely difficult to do for a pop album. There's only a tiny handful that I can think of, specifically like modern pop artists, bands, whatever, that have solid like 10 out of 10 albums. This is one of them. Lyrically, incredible, vocally great. Mike Shinoda takes over lead vocals on a handful of songs and does a phenomenal job. So yeah, I adore this album. I think it gets a lot of hate unnecessarily. I get why people may not be fans of it if you like their other stuff, but I really dig it, and I think even the features help it. I think Kiara's feature on Heavy works very well, and I loved the irony when they released Heavy, and it was after the hunting party releasing a song called Heavy and having it be the softest thing that you put out to that time period. Great. Loved the irony of it. They knew exactly what they were doing when they put that one out as the lead single.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not a rock album. It's not a rap album. It's the most farthest thing that they could probably do as far as pop goes. And I've said this for every album, and this is their most recent one. As someone who's not
do it.
Oh,
I'm handing you the sword.
Oh no! As someone who just was not familiar, and I didn't realize this came out in 2017. I was like, wow, this is like sounds like it's hard to believe it's 5 years old. As Kyle said, but I mean, Chester did die later that year. Unfortunately, very very sad passing. We miss you, and you know, God bless you. You were a gift for the Linkin Park and the community there and all that. But you're right though. The irony there with Heavy.
They did that on purpose. There's no way they didn't.
Yeah, I was about to say like it's called Heavy, but it's like a light song, which is ironic. Yeah, pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, let's go down to the track listing for a second, shall we? Yes, we have a lot of writers here, but that's okay. And not everything's gonna be great or perfect. Well, in some people's eyes, it might be. Who knows? Nobody Can Save Me. Good Goodbye, featuring Pusha T and Stormzy. Talking to Myself. Battle Symphony. Invisible. Heavy, featuring Kiara. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I believe it's Kiara.
Oh, Kiara. Okay. Sorry for Now. Halfway Right. One More Light, which is the second to last song. And Sharp Edges. What are some standout tracks to you guys? Let's start with Mike.
What stands out is that Chester Bennington's barely. I think that's what stands out. I think he was out of the band at this point in the sense of like where he was. Kind of like things he was dealing with, and I feel like, yeah, it's really sad. It's kind of sad that and it's crazy that One More Light is not really, there's not a ton of involvement with him either. That's a great song. It's a very guitar written song. Like you can tell the guitar really cries on that song. Like, it almost feels like the person who was writing it was writing, it's just a real grieving song, about losing someone, and actually I'm a poet. I write poetry, and it influenced me to write a poem about the instruments in an orchestra. When one goes out, you can tell something's wrong. This is the same thing with the whole point of the song was like, when there's a light, when one light goes out, can you really tell? But I can tell, and the people who are paying attention can tell. People who have the right ear for music can tell when an orchestra is off. When I played in the orchestra as a kid, I couldn't play music correctly, so I was copying everyone else's movements. I played the trombone, and I was like, okay, I gotta do this, do that, do this, and I'm messing up. And the teacher heard it, and he said, "All right, let's all go down the line and play this." And oh no, we're one by one, we're gonna play it. I'm not gonna be able to play it. And he could tell the sound was out, and just hearing that song and that meaning behind it, just it really blows your mind. What they were saying, and that's my standout track. I hate to be that guy, but other than that, everything else is, to me, it's pretty fluff. And I appreciate that song so much that it's almost that one song is worth that album. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice that it came out of it. And maybe if I were to be honest with you, I might say Heavy's not a bad song. It's not terrible. It's definitely not something I would think Linkin Park would do or want to hear from Linkin Park, but just as music played by someone, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, other than that, yeah, there's pretty much not much else I could say. I will direct it over to Kyle.
Yes, I mean, Mike really hit the nail on the head with One More Light there. That it's really what really shines on this album. That is arguably one of the best songs they've ever written, and the sheer emotion in that song, it's nuts. Nobody Can Save Me. I love that one. Really, the only song on this album that I like it, but it feels out of place talking to myself. It's just like, oh, we need that one like somewhat upbeat rock song for the album. And it's doesn't work really for me. Was disappointed that was kind of like, I think I was released as a single like the day Chester like killed himself. I think it was very poorly timed where that was posted on their social media, and then it was like, oh, but it's a shame that to me was the last thing that was like a big thing. Sharp Edges, I think, is a nice way to end it, but it's probably my second least favorite. Other than that, the album is great. Like I said, lyrically immense. I love the lyrics all around. Heavy, massive standout, being one of the only two songs that Chester contributed writing to. And I think that and Halfway Right really show where he was at, unfortunately, at the time. And it's a shame that we'll never hear any other writing from him again. And it is crazy to me because when you listen to I can see why people aren't aware that he only wrote those two songs. I can see why people would go back and look at this album and be like, oh, he was trying to tell us this, and then be like, well, actually he didn't write most of these songs. So that's a really interesting thing to me. Like, I don't know, maybe Mike was picking up on things from Chester. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm not him. But it's just the timing of this album coming out is just so strange. I love it. But yeah, I mean, Battle Symphony, incredible. Mike's vocals on Invisible, he does the entire song. Same thing. I like a lot how on Sorry for Now, the roles are reversed, where Mike does the singing and Chester does a rap in the middle of it. I just found that to be really interesting. It's the one song Chester raps in. And yeah, I mean, I love this album. I think every song is great, with the exception of Talking to Myself. I'd say it's a damn near perfect album for me anyway.
So some standout tracks for me personally are obviously their only title track they've ever done. I've talked about before. Title tracks may just work. One More Light, obviously, Heavy, and those are really it for me though. I mean, but I was just on a side note, you were right though, Kyle. Talking to Myself was released the day Chester Bennington was found dead.
Yep.
I just by looking at this right now, I was like, oh my god, they released it on the same day that he was found dead.
Yep.
Which is that one, might hold some weight for some people, but I was like, that's finding that out right now. I'm like, it's rubbing me like, oh, that happened that way. But Heavy, obviously, One More Light for me personally. Those are the two definitely stand out. Overall, definitely solid, pop album, I would say personally. It's definitely not it's like we said, it's not a rock album, it's not a rap album, but it is a good record overall. I mean, so critics were like, what's going on? But ultimately, where does this rank? I know Kyle already said this, but like, where does it rank amongst your Linkin Park albums? Kyle already said this, but you can go first.
Yeah, it's my number one.
Okay.
Nothing else to say about it, really. The one other thing I want to mention about it is shortly before this, a couple of years before this, there was a big trend, specifically in the metalcore community, and Mike, I'm sure you know this all too well too, of what I like to call self-help core, where all these metalcore bands, specifically people like Of Mice and Men, released all these songs, like albums worth of these songs that were like, oh, life's worth living, you got this, blah blah blah, like all that. And that never really worked for me much. I always thought it was the corniest thing. But I think that Linkin Park took lyrics in a similar vein to that, but put it in a much more relatable, not just like, oh, you got this, you can do this, like life gets better. They put it in a more relatable, like, yeah, we all feel like this. And that's what I like about this album so much. So number one for that and other reasons as well.
Mike.
It's funny, the person who writes poetry and writes lyrics is less about lyrics and music and more about music, which is crazy because you'd think it would be there'd be a 50-50 or even maybe like a leaning side towards writing lyrics. But I've always been a music first guy. The lyrics in this I have no judgment for. They're 100% sincere, 100% from the heart, and have no bearing on any rating I have for most of my albums. There are times where lyrics will jump out and kick me in the face and say, hey, listen to this. And if the music's terrible, I'll be like, oh, the lyrics are great on that. But when they perfectly align, like the two forces, music and lyric, come together and form a perfect kind of formula, it's that rare time when a song or like One More Light would come and really be like the shining star. But that's it's my last album. I appreciate it, but it's definitely it's a goodbye to them and their career. And I mean, who knows, they might make a rebound, but I just feel like without Chester, I know they would, I hate when bands this, oh, if we quit, it's like we're not carrying on with the spirit of this part. No, don't use that as an excuse when you want more money to keep continuing to use the name of the band's albums. Carry the spirit on in the way everybody carries the spirit on. You don't have to carry a music project on because that's nonsense. Yeah. So overall, that's how it's.
Yeah, I mean, I have mine at number 7 only because it was just, when I think of Linkin Park, I don't really think of this as like, don't get me wrong, it's really great. It's great for what it is. It's great for, like, it's the last one with Chester Bennington. It's like, it's kind of, if you look at it, it's like, it's a kind of a nice send off in a sense before they knew he would die. But I look at it as a definite new take on a band that definitely wants to redefine themselves, but at the same time, it drew away from when I think of Linkin Park in my head, I don't think of this. I think of like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, type of that type of sound in particular, like the rap, like the rap, the metal. And when I first heard this, I was like, what? I was in shock, because I was in shock, for lack of a better word. I was like, oh my God, this is Linkin Park still? What? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the title track. Heavy is a great track too. But just as when I think of Linkin Park, I'm like, I don't think of a Linkin Park as, it's not bad, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think of it as a Linkin Park, like typical sounding, you know what I mean, record. That's me personally though. And I'm sure many people would say that as well, but
Oh, I'm sure this is almost everyone's. And almost every Linkin Park fan, I'm sure, has this as their bottom.
But I appreciate, Kyle, that you know what, you don't have to change how you feel because like a mob of angry Linkin Park fans who have like frosted hair, spiked hair, and like chains are gonna like bully you and like, you're not a true fan because you like this, and you get the hell out of here. Like, he's as a true fan as a true fan gets, because he likes this era versus that era.
Like I said, like this was like my number one before Chester passed away. Like, it was only out for like a month and a half or 2 months or so before that happened.
Right.
And at first I was a little thrown off by it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, at first I was on the same train, like, this is kind of weird. But the more I sat with it, the more I was like, I really like this. And then it kind of made me mad at first when in the few months after he passed away, all these people bandwagoning to the album, like, oh, it's actually a pretty good album. I'm like, well, where were you a few months ago? You're only saying that because you think it's some kind of goodbye message from the guy when it wasn't. Like, stop it. That made me mad to see. Because I'm like, you know what? Maybe if you gave the damn guy some encouragement when the album actually was released, instead of just being like, this is terrible. Well, you're such a sellout. Maybe we cheered the guy up a little bit.
Right.
I'm not saying that people had to like it. I understand why people don't. I just hate people that bandwagoned onto it after the fact. And Mike, I do agree with you. Mike, I guess concluding thoughts on Linkin Park as a whole here. Chester Bennington's death was the only celebrity death to actually have any like impact on me. I'm gonna be honest. Usually I hear a celebrity dies, I'm like, oh, that's a shame. But as someone who legitimately grew up listening to them, going through every era of this band as it was happening from the beginning to the end. I mean, literally from the time I was 5 years old, going through like, so my elementary school days were essentially like Hybrid Theory, Meteor, and then like middle school. So this is a part of every part of my like, developmental like upbringing that he was involved in. So that did hit me pretty hard when I heard that, and it was so shocking out of the blue. And I agree. I don't think they should carry on. If they have things in the vault for like anniversaries that they want to be like, oh, here's some, demos or some unreleased songs or whatever that like we'll throw it out in a bundle. Sure, by all means, I'll take it. Like, that'd be interesting to hear.
You could do Linkin Field or like another, like it could be a different,
Washington Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like, I don't need them to, because I feel like no matter what, it would feel like a cash grab. Because what are they have two options, really, three options, I guess, is to have Mike Shinoda take over all lead vocals, which there's just some stuff he can't do. So it's either going to let the crowd sing that, or you're going to have just Chester's backing track play. You're going to replace Chester, and if that happens, it'll never be the same.
That person will be like,
it'll be the most hated person.
Yeah, just let it die, and continue to make music.
Yeah, and the last option is to do the Dio route, which is to have like a Chester hologram up on stage, which is, I think, the worst thing you could do. Yeah. So I think they need to let it die. They have a great legacy. I think One More Light was not only the perfect album for them to go out on, I think it, even lyrically, I think it serves as like a goodbye from the band. I really enjoyed. I think they've reached their natural stopping point, and I think they've left a legacy that's going to influence people for even decades to come.
Mike, any concluding thoughts for Linkin Park at all?
Kyle said it perfectly, and this I to hear them go back and do the old Linkin Park style without Chester, and even doing the old Linkin Park style as a pure form without like blending some of the new sound in, it just would feel like a desperate attempt to try and capitalize on their original sound, and just desperate need to try and regain some legitimacy in the absence of the true voice of the band. And it would also be a very selfish thing to do, regardless of how many messages they put out. Oh, it's for the spirit, we got to carry it. Like, no, it's not, and never. Like, I will never agree with that. Like, so, I agree with everything you said. Just let it move on and start a new musical project. Making music like you've been doing. Your bands will follow you no matter what your name is.
I pretty much agree with everything both of you guys said. The only thing I want to add on is that I agree. Like, Chester did pass away 5 years ago now. Wow, it's crazy.
Insane.
It's hard to believe. Yeah, it's been so long. But I will say, like, I'm of the opinion that after listening to all of the albums and ending on the note that they left with, their last album, I don't see how they could continue at all. I mean, I agree with Kyle on that. I also agree with Mike that they should definitely, if they want to, actually, I think Kyle said this, if they want to release stuff as like, hey, we've unreleased tracks or demos, whatever, throw those out for sure. Maybe that could be like a new compilation album or something like that, or whatever, or even a greatest hits. So, hey, here we go. Here's our 10, 15 best songs on an album. Here you go. I mean, that might be overdoing it, but I think continuing without Chester or replacing him in general would be really difficult, of course, given the fact that he was such a pivotal part of the band in general. I think that it's hard to imagine a whole Linkin Park without him. I mean, you're right. They could do a hologram, but who wants to see that? Let's be real. Or backing tracks. I mean, the only reason I think backing tracks could work, but they wouldn't be the same, of course. But I think they could work. Just on a complete side note, I did see Paul McCartney recently, and one of the things they did was during the encore, they actually had a footage of John Lennon from the rooftop concert on stage. So Paul was singing with John still, which I think they could do that with Chester to an extent.
He's just such a big part of all the songs, though, that it'd be most of the songs would just be his recording. I just don't see it like working out.
Yeah,
Bee Gees did that with their brother who passed away. They actually had Barry Giver, like singing along with it. You know, it's kind of interesting. But I mean, like, he's not the main part. He's part of a group. Yeah, so that's just kind of the singular voice alongside Mike Shinoda. But and Mike Shinoda, I'm no discount his voice and stuff, but they're be able to hold that band if he takes over complete vocals and does both on his own, it would just be weird, and I wouldn't be up for it.
All right, well, that will do it for us as far as talking about the album. But Kyle is going to share his screen now and share our rankings of the albums in general. You all set? There you go. Perfect. So this is what we got.
So we'll start with me. Oh, what happened?
That's you right there?
Yeah,
right there.
A minute.
That's me.
Heck?
I don't know why it didn't work. That was weird.
We'll start with
We'll start with Mike. Mike glitched the whole thing. Technical difficulties online.
Well, when you were talking, your voice kind of like digitalized, like kind of got all weird, and I almost thought you were doing a Robot Boy rendition or something. Like I was.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I was just like you were like a little, like your voice like went robotic.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna start with Kyle.
So this is mine. One More Light, number 1. Thousand Suns, number 2. Hybrid Theory. Living Things. Minutes to Midnight. Hunting Party. And Meteora. Definitely the most
Ow!
You show it to any Linkin Park fan, you're gonna get it. You're gonna hurt some feelings there. That's pretty brutal. JT. Got Hybrid Theory, Meteora, Thousand Suns, Living Things, Minutes to Midnight, Hunting Party, and One More Light.
Almost the order they were released to some with a couple switches up.
But when we did Hybrid Theory and Meteora, I was waiting for JT's to just be chronologically like, oh,
Exactly.
from the new fan who's just listening to them, like, oh, I like this song. And I like
this is great, guys.
I like this album less. I like this album less. I like this album less.
That album's terrible.
This one's horrible.
And then we got Mike, Minutes to Midnight, which surprised me. Hybrid Theory, Meteora, Living Things, which we all agreed on, Hunting Party, Thousand Suns, and One More Light. But yeah, I'm glad we could all agree on at least one.
Man. Yeah, man. Good insight from all different age levels, all different perspectives. I appreciate all that stuff, and none of it is wrong and none of it's right. That's the beauty of opinion, music. That's it.
Well, that was a lot. But I ultimately, guys, is what you guys have to say. Sound off on Twitter, Instagram at The Super Review Show. I want to thank the two gentlemen for doing this enormously long live stream with us tonight. I want to thank Mike for joining us as always. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kyle Q, Kyle, this is Kyle and I's idea doing this on the channel. And I got to admit, Kyle, you've been a big help. This is a big fun one to do. We can't wait to do another one next week. We'll figure out whatever that is when the time comes. But thank you, Kyle, as always.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for including Mike, too.
Of course.
Of course. How could we not? And thank you for watching and listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And we will see you guys next week for another episode of Career Retrospectives. Hopefully you will continue to enjoy this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll see you guys next week. So stay safe and take care.